So, like, Bacon did all the buildings that you see in the Metropolis. He did the homesteads, buildings.
Oh, cool. Are you going to be showing any more of the like orc cities? Because I know most of what you've seen shown in the Metropolis so far have been the human cities.
I think either the end of this week or the beginning of next week, we'll be doing some of the Empyrean Elf architecture buildings
cool.
in the game. Or actually, I think it's the Empyrean homesteads. Some of those buildings.
Nice.
Any idea when we might get to see the angel and demon skins in game?
Yeah. We have a new character artist, actually, that we just hired last week. And he was former art director at Sony. And I think I'm going to have him probably start on the angel skin next week. But I don't know if it'll be before the end of the Kickstarter.
The streams stop after the Kickstarter, right?
We'll probably do the streams like once every couple of weeks just to showcase progress and stuff, as opposed to doing it 3 times a week.
I was about to say, I kind of feel like you're going to run out of information here eventually because, you know.
Well, we have a lot of information, but after the Kickstarter's finished, I'm probably going to cut it down to twice a month, and we'll do, focused releases on different content and stuff.
Are you going to still keep it at the hour? Because it seems like if it's only twice a month, it's going to be a lot more information that people are going to want to get out of y'all.
Yeah, it depends. We might do it a little bit longer than an hour. And if we don't, I think every week we'll probably do some like more question answering, like on Discord and forums and stuff.
The purpose right now isn't to answer questions, so this is in the open floor, right?
You may do whatever you'd like. I've designated the next 20 minutes to this chat room.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
I'm just surprised people aren't exploding with answers like it has been the last couple times you've been in here.
We've had a pretty steady. Well, we've had a pretty steady stream of information with I don't know what 6-9 live streams.
You know what I love about the community right now with Ashes of Creation is that everyone's so involved and connected well, and there's a lot of information that's obviously coming out of the studios. But the great thing is like, when you guys are watching that and just taking it in, you can reverberate that to people who kind of miss the streams and stuff. So it's really cool to see that, like, I don't have to be necessarily everywhere. I can see community members giving answers and linking stuff on Discord, and that's really cool.
Will there be eggplants in the game?
Will there be eggplants? We haven't fully fleshed out all of the potential crops and growing different foods, so I can't give you an answer necessarily at the moment.
One thing I've wanted to know, rogues, will they have different types of poisons and everything that they can apply to daggers and or bows?
I really like poison play, and it is something that is a theme in some of the skills that the rogue uses.
Nice.
Whether or not you can have customized types of poisons to determine effects on opponents and or PvE targets based on different applicable items to weapons and whatnot, or used in skill creation, that's a potential.
Okay.
Won't know more on that until probably a little later.
I don't know how much you look at Reddit, but there was a big thread about the Unreal Engine. And I know you talked a little bit about redoing the back end, but I was wondering if you could expand a little bit why you picked that or what your thoughts are as far as performance.
So, I mean, you got to be careful when you read stuff on Reddit. There's a lot of people there who like to, think they know what they're talking about, but Unreal Engine 4, out of the box, no engine is going to be able to achieve a massively multiplayer world and network coding that's required for these massive battles that we intend to see in Ashes of Creation. And we knew that going into creating the game when we were shopping engines. What Unreal 4 offers is a completely unadulterated access to the source code and our ability to customize any portion of that engine that we want. And not only that, but Epic Games, the Unreal Engine creators, are very supportive, both from an engineering standpoint and on a communication standpoint with our engineers. And it was the engine that we felt most comfortable with being able to work with from a communication standpoint between the front end and the back end, and being able to create that back-end networking code that's going to communicate between the client and the server and other clients. That's something that I think I'm going to probably have Jason and Kevin, who are 2 engineers on the project, have over 15 years experience specifically with network code for MMOs like EverQuest 1, 2, Vanguard, and Star Wars Galaxies. I'm going to have them probably do a write-up on just kind of explaining. We also have an article coming out. Actually, I think it's a blog piece that's coming out on unrealengine.com on Monday. That's kind of giving a little bit more technical look under the hood of how we're going to accomplish, sorry, you can probably hear my dogs in the background, how we're going to accomplish that task of making it very MMO specific feasibility.
Do y'all potentially maybe see yourselves designing y'all's own engine at a later point in time for later titles, like some companies have? I think Assassin's Creed did the Anvil engine.
Yeah, so I mean, you got to think about like, well, what does that exactly mean, developing your own engine? Because essentially, by going with Unreal Engine 4, you have both the ability to create your own aspects of the engine that you would like to create, and then keeping the parts that you like. For example, the graphical fidelity of Unreal Engine 4 is stunning. They have, dozens of engineers that have been working a long time on creating that engine, and it's completely customizable. So there wouldn't be a great difference between starting from scratch when determining what you can do and just taking UE4 and making it do what you want. Those two things are interchangeable now. So creating your own engine really is kind of, in my opinion, a waste of time in today's technology and accessibility.
Yeah,
right,
I've
got an interesting question for you, Stephen.
Sure.
When you first step into an MMO, what's the first thing you look for when you say, all right, this is the MMO I want to play?
That's a good question. For me personally, I recognize that there's a lot of different interests in MMOs, and I like there to be a broad application for what players can do. But for me personally, the most important part of an MMO that I'm playing is probably going to be the interaction between other players in the game. Is it faction-based first? Okay, it's not faction-based. Great, I like that. What type of agency do I have as a guild leader in creating a small community, and how it can interact with others? And then how can I impact the story and the server so that my presence is known? Like those types of things make me excited about an MMO. So that's why in Ashes of Creation, we want a player to feel like their presence is known, whether they choose to exercise that in the narrative they're experiencing on an individual basis or on a broader one. Their abilities to interact with other players, to complete content and giant raids, whether they be PvE or PvP, and just having something that appeals to the things that players want to do on a day-to-day basis, not having to feel repetitive at the same time, experiencing new content and having that hook to discover more.
You had answered me a while ago about the Predator in the video using a bow, that the Ranger augments the rogue's abilities to an extent to give him ranged capabilities. does it augment to an extent, or what I was kind of speculating at, does it augment it to an extent where some abilities you be required to use a bow? And if that's the case, would it cause you to use some kind of weapon swapping mechanism or system like Guild Wars 2 has?
So the secondary class, excuse me, hold on one second. Sorry. The secondary class takes existing skills and it changes the flavor to one of four. We're going to probably go with four different types of augments from the secondary class. So the ranger being applied as a secondary class to the rogue took a backstab skill, and it applied the ranger's ranged capability to the skill, and basically created that critical hit skill that does a high amount of burst damage, and changed it to we chose to change it to a ranged ability. That was one of the augments available.
But would you be required at that point to use a bow for that ability, or can you still use a dagger with just the range capability?
So at that point, for that particular skill, it would be a bow. So you would have and the way we're going to do it is, I believe, you're going to be able to have a ranged weapon equipped while having your melee weapons equipped as well. So you won't have to swap between them.
I've got a question that I was discussing in another channel with a couple people. It was about the thieves. Would you be able to steal like a small amount from other players, or would that not be something you'd be looking at too?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Say it one more time.
Like with a thieves class or something, would you be able to like steal from other players, or would you want?
No, you can't. You can't steal from other players. And you're talking about the Thieves Guild, one of the social organizations. Yeah. So the Thieves Guild is going to have something that's less along the lines of stealing from individual players and more along the lines of stealing from communities and or nodes and things like that. So it's not something that is owned by an individual. Rather, it's something that perhaps the community came together to create. Like, let's say, there's a Scholars Academy at a node, right? And you're a part of the Thieves Guild in a different node. Well, there may be a quest there to steal an item that is housed within the Scholars Academy. And you may now, if you choose to accept that quest, you may now be an enemy of the NPCs of that Scholars Academy should you go near it. And members of that academy may be able to openly kill you within the area if you approach the academy, so to speak. I mean, that's an example of how the Thieves Guild may operate from a quest standpoint. It's not going to be individually stealing something from another person, as opposed to following quest lines that involve sneaking in somewhere, grabbing something, taking it back, advancing in that way.
Oh, okay.
I like the sound of that.
Hey, Steven, I got a question.
Yeah.
So the combat system, is it going to be more like similar to like something like BDO, or like more of a RuneScape sort of Spectrum combat? Because like you haven't really like touched too much that on like the videos yet, and I'm just kind of curious.
I've played a lot of MMORPGs, and I've played with a lot of varying degrees of combat styles, and I have received that question a few times, and honestly, I can't give you an answer of what it most resembles, because it is a very unique system that we're intending to create, and we're still in the process of creating it. You know, if I had the system itself completed enough to show where, you know, people wouldn't come and see it and say, oh, this is the system, it's done, you know, not understand it's pre-alpha, then I would show it. But at this moment, I want to wait until it's a little bit more polished and has the goals I have with its interaction on the UI side before I show it. But I can't say like that it is like any other MMO I've played, honestly.
So it doesn't really correlate, not really similar with any others, like combat-wise?
There are aspects that do and aspects that don't.
On a general note for that, is it in your head, are you leaning more toward action or tab?
There's honestly a very comfortable blend of the two. I feel that it's and then there's a third aspect too that I don't want to announce yet, but you know, you're going you're going to see a prevalence of both tab targeting and action, in the sense that there's a high degree of mobility, placement, and skill use templates, kind of, that require the attention sometimes of what an action game requires for players. And then at the same time, there are skills that are targetable.
So it's kind of like a target lock system, where it's like you lock onto the target and you're still kind of, moving around very heavily. Is that?
Not exactly. No, not exactly. You don't have to have a target lock in order for some skills to be applied to players.
Would it be like
and
some
then there are
skill
some
shots?
skills that are directional. Yeah, there are some skill shots. So as I said, there's a comfortable blend between the two. You're just going to have to wait until
Are you using
we
a
have it fleshed
combo
enough to
system?
do. There will be skills and effects that can combo with each other, and then there also will be keystroke periods.
Will there be in-game toilets?
No, I don't think so.
I saw you were on, and I had to come in just to ask that.
Oh, I have a question. When it comes
Yes.
to magic, would you be able to, let's say, if you take the mage class, you see a tree, would there be magic that allows you to rip that tree from the ground and throw it at a player, or maybe
Like a
for raiding?
telekinetic gathering or something.
Yeah, something like that. Let's say.
Gosh, it's a very specific question.
Or
you
can I
can
expand on this
definitely interact with the environment. There are locations where the environment is interactable with certain skills, and those are a lot of utility type skills. For example, you saw in our mage video where there was an obstruction, and the mage was capable of removing the obstruction, that boulder. Whether or not that's a skill use applicable to telekinetically gathering material and then like using it against another player, at the moment I don't have a skill like that.
Yeah, I would like kind of go off on that. Is like, besides that, is there any kind of way you could use your environment? Just like, say there's like an axe over there, you could go and pick it up if you wanted to, or would you be like, I don't know how to exactly to go into this. Like, could you use your environment in combat and not just your skills?
In PvE combat, there's definitely going to be environments that will have hazards that you could use to your advantage. It will have materials and or structures that you could utilize for sure. In regards to PvP, less likely that would be the case.
You've given us an example of a melee or physical damage to a mage augment ability. Is there any way you could give us at least one example of how you'd say take a mage main and then augment it with a physical damage dealer's ability?
Yeah. So, for example, you're going to have, okay, let's say you're a mage and you have one of the skills is that you've seen us cast before is a lightning skill that kind of erupts with a charge against another player of lightning from a distance. A melee ability that you may be able to employ as an augment for that lightning arc is, instead of having an increased range of that, you could apply your melee augment that is similar to like a forward AoE arc, and it would diminish the range ability, but change the skill to be a touch-based attack that deploys within a forward arc. So you could take, for example, the rush ability that a fighter has, and that would apply to a certain type of augment, and that could charge a location in front of you, and then you'd slam the ground with your fist or something, or you would spread in front of you with an animation that would apply the electrical damage to targets in your front arc. So you would change your original arc lightning skill that is a single target or a line attack at a distance of 25-30 meters, and you would change it to a 5-meter AoE front arc that includes a charge rush in a certain direction.
Do you think with magic you'd be able to like pick locks and stuff like that? Like use a spell to unlock something if it is locked.
That's a good question. I don't
Kind
I
of
don't
like
think that-
Morrowind, how they did it.
right. Kind of like a knock spell or something.
Yeah, and be able to lock stuff as well
It's a
with magic.
very it's a specific
And war.
question. I don't have an answer for that right now.
Okay. But do you think you'd have that kind of accessibility like in Morrowind, like being able to like put traps on doors with like spells?
We definitely
stuff like
want to
that?
include player-made traps, and that could come in the form of like some type of arcane rune that's proximity. It could come in the form of tripwire or crawl traps. We want to include because there's hazards and utility spells. We want to make sure that the utility spells are not only applicable to overcoming hazards that are environmentally placed by the designers in certain areas, but also could potentially be traps placed by players for different battlefields and stuff. So there's a potential for that.
Would you be able to get like scrolls where you could get like certain like strong spells that you wouldn't be able, like most people wouldn't be able to get, like rare spells that you learn from scrolls?
Yeah, the issue with that becomes who can use those scrolls, and if martial classes now have the ability to use arcane spells, it kind of dips into the role of an arcane class.
Yeah.
It's a cool idea. I love it personally because, like in RPG tabletop games that I play, Pathfinder or D&D, scrolls are a healthy balancing act because there's such an unbalanced aspect of arcane classes in D&D and Pathfinder. And scrolls kind of give that application to martial classes, brings them up a little bit. But in the game, we're going for a very strong balance for all the classes, and I don't want to dip into a certain role that gives access to others.
Wouldn't it go with all of them because you can go like a warrior, go with all of them?
I'm sorry, you cut out there. What was that?
Because you can use magic with like a warrior, so you could use the scroll with
Right, but if you want to use magic with a warrior, you must make the conscious decision to choose your secondary class as such, right?
Yeah.
Like here, if it's an item that's just, purchasable or craftable or discoverable, then it's a different story.
True.
I got a question.
Yeah.
All right. If I was a warrior, right, and my second class was summoner, could I have a beast with me? Like summon a beast?
So the only way, you definitely wouldn't be able to summon a beast that would have skills and stuff like that. The question could be like, if you were to use a skill, would the beast flavor appear to finish the skill? The beast summoning comes with a summoner primary, and you do not add new skills when you take a secondary class. You augment existing ones. So you wouldn't be able to summon a beast, so to speak.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question about the map.
All right, last question though, because I got to run.
I was wondering is there going to be an in-game world map, or do players have to discover areas?
There will be an in-game world map, but it will be Fog of War equal to, I think it's pretty much going to be Fog of War, and you will have to discover the areas.
So it's not randomly generated?
No, the map is not randomly generated.
Sweet.
Awesome. I was actually worried about that.
No, not randomly. Thanks,
As
guys.
usual.
Appreciate it, Steven.
Have fun, man.
Later, guys.
I'm looking forward to the game.
Steven.
I love you.